first came to church because Anton, one of our fabulous members, invited me. Him and I hadn't spoken in about 3 years. We had a falling out in college, and at the end of the falling out, I was like, God, I'm never talking to him again, but I hope you bless him, and I hope he has a good life, but I hope I never see him again. A friend of mine was still in contact with him, and he had run into him that morning, and he spoke this amazing word over her life and gave her hope. And she relayed that to me and said, hey, like, I ran into Anton, and he said these amazing things. We should meet with him tonight. Let's have dinner. Her mom ended up passing away, so she had to go home immediately. But she was like, you should still go to dinner with Anton. So I ended up meeting up with Anton and his brother, Gabriel. And he's like, so what's happened in the past 3 years? I haven't really seen you. And I was just like, why don't you share? Because I don't like you. And he's like, well, internal thinking. And he's like, okay, yeah. And he told me about this whole journey that he'd been on in the past 3 years where God had completely changed his life and changed his heart towards people and family and friends. And he said it all happened one day when he ran into Pastor Andy, and Pastor Andy invited him to church. And I was like, that's weird. I know you, and I know how you are, and I know how you treat people. And like, you're not someone who prays or, believes in healing. And he's like, no, like I'm changed. That's who I am. And I didn't believe him. And I was like, okay, whatever. So he was like, the night kind of ended. We had our tacos. It was great. And then he was like, hey, like, let me pray for you. And if you want to come to church, great. If you don't, great. But I hope you're back in my life to stay. But like, me in complete disbelief over here. I'm just like, this is stupid. God's not going to show up. You don't believe in God. It was really quiet for a while. And then all of a sudden he just got downloaded with everything that was happening in my life. And at that point, I had been living at home for a while. I was very discouraged. I was very broken and very bitter and very sad. And in the past, I had dealt with suicide and lots of suicidal thoughts and hearing voices and all of these unfun things. He was just like, all those things that you're struggling with, like, God knows, and that's not who you are. That might be what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're seeing, but that's not who you are, and that's not what God has for you. And I was like, oh my God, Anton does know God. What is happening? And my world was just completely turned upside down for many reasons. One, this crazy man who I love and adore had completely changed. Like, the brokenness, the bitterness, the pain, all of these things that had hurt me, previously were gone. And that's not who he was anymore. And I was like, I have to get to know this new person. And so he just prayed for me. And of course, you break down crying. And then he was just like, look, he's like, do you see your hands? He's like, look at your hands. You're sparkling. There's gold dust. And I was like, I'm freaking out. What's going on? And I was just like, God's here and this is crazy. Like, he just completely showed up in an instant. Like, prayer happened and he showed up in an instant. The last thing Anton, he was just like, yeah, like, I hope that this meant something to you and it was good, and hopefully I'll see you at church. And I was like, I'm not going. I live an hour away. That's stupid. And so I left and I was driving, and God was like, 3 years ago, you prayed that he would be changed, and that he, all of the things that you had in your life, God's goodness and love and glory and power would encounter him. And like, that happened. Like, your prayer, even though you were angry and you were bitter and you were in pain, like I honored that prayer, and like, there's Anton. And I just completely melted because I prayed that prayer out of hurt and out of pain for someone who I never thought would come to God. Like, I thought it was over. I thought we would never be friends again, and I didn't think that restoration was possible, or that reconciliation was even possible. And boy, was I wrong. And not only like did he heal Anton and bring him to this place, but in my time of need, he brought him to me and gave me hope in a way that I didn't even think possible, and dared me to dream again that, if reconciliation can happen with someone, who had hurt me so deeply, like maybe the same thing could happen with my family. Maybe the same thing could happen with my friends. Maybe the same thing can happen in my own heart. And that was the beginning of my journey at the dwelling place. God was just like, you gotta go. And I was like, you're right. I gotta go. For 4 months, I commuted an hour and I went to church every Sunday, and I tried to serve as much as I could, and I was tired. I was so tired, but it was worth it. It was so worth it for all the change that's happened in my life. Like, just chains being broken and God, like, setting me free. Like, I'm not depressed. I'm not sad. I'm not angry. I'm not hurt. Like, and when I do get bitter, I have strong women and men of God around me, surrounding me and lifting me up and saying, that is not who you are. You are a woman of God. You are a daughter. And that is worth an hour drive. That's worth being tired. That's worth, going to church 5 times a week and only having 2 nights to myself. It's worth everything, for not only my life being changed, but the lives that I see being changed around me. That's everything.